Hi. So I wanted to give you an overview of the HTML5 boilerplate. So this is basically a collection of templates that I've been working on for the past few years. And it's kind of just a lot of really good front-end development best practices kind of baked into one collection. And so it helps you go in faster. You can be doing HTML5, you can be doing HTML4, but there's a lot of good tricks in here that you might want to consider. So the first thing I just want to say is that using this is not really necessary if you want to be doing HTML5 development. I just want to give you an idea of kind of the easiest HTML5 document you could have. So I'm over here and let's see. So this is, we're going to put in the doc type, we're going to put in the title. Hey guys, yeah, rock and roll. Okay, and then well, we'll put in a p tag and be like, booyah. And I forgot one thing, which is the meta car set. Always a good idea. Always. Yeah, we're gonna go UTF-8. Okay, this right here is an HTML5 document. It's valid HTML. The red is just, TextMate likes to bitch at me, but really that can be lowercase or uppercase. This is HTML5. There's no body, there's no head. That's cool. You can put them in, obviously, that's fine. And that's all you really need to get going with HTML5. What's in the boilerplate gives you a lot more, clearly. But we'll kind of see, I'll tell you about the value of what's in it as we go. So there's two versions, I guess, of the boilerplate. One is documented and one is stripped. It doesn't have any of the comments inside of it, so once you're familiar with the pieces inside of it, feel free to just kind of use that as your place to start from. The documented is what we're going to be looking at today, and in fact we're going to be looking at the part, a version of boilerplate that's currently in development. So I haven't yet released this yet. So we're going to open this up. And the first thing I kind of want to point out is the things that you might want to delete like right away. One of these is demo. Demo is just a file with a bunch of different kinds of HTML elements. Even down at the bottom, it has these progress and meter things, which look really cool in WebKit right now. And it just kind of gives a view of what the boilerplate starts you off with. You can see everything's reset, everything doesn't look very good. All the headings, the H1s and H2s and H3s all look the same. But this is kind of where you get left off. You might want to delete this because you probably don't need it in your app. But while I'm showing this, I just want to point out this other piece, which is the profiler. So this is down at the very bottom of the HTML here's the profiler, and it says remove for production. You don't want this going into your production code because it will actually slow down the page a little bit. But let me show you what it actually does. So I'm just going to load this up. One second. There we go. Okay. And I'm just going to do a few things. I'm going to define a function to create a random hex color, and I'm going to color all the P's random hex colors. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of execute some JavaScript. I'm using jQuery to help me out here. And now I'm just going to call profile.show. So this is the call that's in boilerplate, and calling profile show pops up this guy. So this is the profiler from YUI, and the YUI team put together this JavaScript-based profiler, and what it's doing by default is just watching the jQuery object and kind of like seeing what's called, gives you an idea of what's going on. So this kind of view you might be familiar with from Firebug, for instance, but this runs cross-browser, and so if you want to actually profile in IE6 or IE7, which do not have profilers, this is really your only option. And by default, it watches the jQuery object, but you can change it and kind of tell it to watch different objects or functions or whatever you want. Okay, so if you don't have a need for profiling and you're not, writing much JavaScript, feel free to get rid of that and maybe demo and delete those references to the HTML. So the other things that I want to point out that are in the root of the project are a 404 page. And so this just shows a not found message. Feel free to customize it. The README, you can delete that. Robots is totally empty. You might want to put in things saying that you don't want certain folders to be indexed by search engines. It's just there for you. And then there's the fave icon and Apple Touch icon. Apple Touch icon is used if you want to add a bookmark to the home screen on an iPhone or iPad. And it's also used by Android, curiously enough. So change the Apple Touch icon and fave icon to be your logo. The cross-domain XML is used by Flash, and it has an empty policy by default, but if you're aware of kind of the security concerns, you can enable it so that you can pull data cross-domain with it. And then there's some web server configuration files. And so the one I'll be going through is the htaccess, which I actually don't see in this view, but I see it up here because it's a dot file, so it's hidden from Finder on Mac. I don't know. Nginx, and I'm just going to view it over in TextMate. Nginx and the web config. So Nginx is for the Nginx server, and this is a configuration that is similar to what's in the Apache config. And web config is for IIS. So if you're using, if you're on a Windows server, then this is probably the file that you're going to be going into. I'll get into some of the details of the server configuration in a bit. But first, I want to go through the HTML. There's a lot of cool tricks in here, and so we're going to kind of go through them one by one. Where to start? I guess I want to start with this Node.js class. This Node.js class is used by Modernizer. Modernizer is referenced right here. And so Modernizer takes this Node.js class and changes it basically to JS if you have JavaScript, which allows you to write your styles if you want to, write it in a progressively enhanced way, and say that, for instance, JS div accordion has something, I don't know, something. Or maybe you're one of those people that actually prefer to style according to a Node.js. So when there's no JavaScript, I'm going to make sure that my accordion title is always display block or something like that. So this kind of gives you the flexibility. The other things that Modernizer does is pretty cool. So it does what people refer to as the HTML5 shiv or HTML5 shim, the HTML5 enabling script, perhaps. And so you might have seen a reference to this HTML5 shim at Google Code. This script is basically included entirely inside of Modernizer. So you don't really need Modernizer and the HTML5 shim because Modernizer already has it. It's a little bit of a bigger file, but not much bigger. What the shim actually does is it makes sure that all the new HTML5 semantic tags can be styled in Internet Explorer, and also makes sure that it can be printed. So this is based on work from Jonathan Neal, who did this printing enhancement, Remy Sharp, who maintains the shim, myself, and some others, and so all that stuff is in Modernizer, in addition to a bunch of feature detections to basically find out what sort of things are in your browser. So this manifests itself over here. I'm just kind of look at the HTML tag, and you can see here we have a bunch of new classes on the HTML tag. So RGBA and HSLA are there. However, no CSS transforms 3D because there's no 3D transform support in the stable version of Chrome right now, but it's coming. And so you can use these to basically customize the view of your site based on the capabilities of the browser that is viewing it, and really customize the experience and optimize it based on what sort of features your users have. So that's that. There's this empty comment up here, and this is just a way to make the page load faster, curiously enough. It's kind of a hack. You can read all about it here. The XUA compatible does two things. One is that it turns on, it basically enables, make sure that you're using the latest version of Internet Explorer, right? So in Internet Explorer 8 and in 9, there's multiple rendering engines inside, and there are a few cases where you can get caught using the IE7 version of the rendering engine when the browser actually has IE8 installed. And so this IE Edge basically says, make sure that always to use the latest one, because I want it to be as fast as possible, and I want to use all the new features. When we're talking about IE9, we definitely want to be using all the new features because we're talking about a browser that is very similar to what we've come to expect with Chrome and Safari and Firefox and Opera. The other part of this is Chrome 1, and this enables Chrome Frame. It doesn't prompt the user or anything. All it does is says, if Chrome Frame, the plugin, is installed on the machine, I want to view this page using Chrome instead of Internet Explorer. So instead of viewing a page with IE6, you probably want it to render with Chrome. It'll be a lot faster, a lot more features. So this is an easy way just to get a much better experience really quickly. Title, description, author, fill them out. Viewport is just this is some default settings to make sure it's going to look good and kind of orient itself right inside of a mobile device. And then we have the Fave icon and the Apple Touch icon that I already went over. If these are in the root of your domain, you can just delete these from the HTML, and all will be fine. The browsers will just use those from then on. And here is our reference to our styles. We have our regular styles, which we'll go into in a moment, and some handheld styles that get used by some older mobile devices. All right, the body tag. So this is a technique that basically puts classes on the body tag based on what IE version you're on. So it allows you to write styles like if we're, so commonly it will be like div box, and it'll be a float right, and then margin is like 10 pixels. We'll do a margin left. But then IE6 does a double float margin bug, and so then sometimes you'll be like, but I want the margin left of IE6 to basically be 5 pixels. But now we can essentially get rid of this CSS hack and do a proper class and override that. So this way we're able to avoid hacks and target IE really nicely. So that's kind of what's going on there. Inside of the body is pretty much empty. We have a container, like a little wrapper. This is very common. A header with the header tag from HTML5. A div with an ID of main, and a footer. It's all empty. It's all up to you. I want this. I mean, I think boilerplate works really well for web applications in addition to documents. So I don't think it needs to have any sort of sidebars or anything else, nav. It's kind of up to you. Down at the bottom, we have a reference to jQuery on the Google CDN. And we have a nice trick here to basically use a locally hosted jQuery if this CDN fails or if you're offline, which is the more common case. If you're developing and you're not online, you still want to access jQuery, but you want your users to grab it off the CDN because it'll load a lot faster. After that, we have two references to our script files where most of the JavaScript is going to go. Plugins, where I kind of like to put other people's code, not things that are my application's code. And then script, which is where that's going to go. For IE6, it gets DD belated ping, which, as far as my experience has shown, is the most robust ping fix script that there is. DD belated ping won't fix things automatically. You'll have to call DD belated.fix, DD belated ping.fix, or pass in elements individually into fix ping. So that's kind of up to you how you want to handle that. But it's there because it's the right way to be handling that problem. If you don't care about IE6, get rid of it. The profiler, which I already showed you, and Google Analytics. So this is an optimized version of the asynchronous Google Analytics script, which Google put out a few months ago. This optimized version has a few more tricks up its sleeve, loads faster, and it's pretty good. One of the things that I want to mention is that it sits at the bottom of the file instead of the top, even though Google recommends to put it at the top. Their reasoning for putting it at the top is that you might want to record a page view if someone has not loaded a page completely. I don't really agree with that. I would say that I don't want to consider that a full page view. If someone closed out of my page, like, heartbeat after it started loading, I wouldn't want to count that. But I can understand in some cases where you might have a more aggressive analytics setup, and perhaps it does belong up there. So feel free to move it. This is basically all it takes. Just drop in your own ID where that UA string is, and you're good. Okay. First, I'll start off with the script files because there's not too much going on in there, and then we'll get into the CSS. So inside script, we have the plugins. This is basically the area where I think that where I have been putting in any jQuery plugins that I've been using, like hover intent or something. Some of these very common ones. I'll just drop it right in between these two things. This is just this remap thing. It's just a protection to make sure that any plugin authors who didn't code their things the right way, we're just going to make a little safety net around there to make sure that we do it the right way. After that is a log function. And so this is kind of an alternative to using console.log. So the nice thing here is that So typically you'll be like, okay, in the function, and you'll have these debug statements all throughout your code, and then accidentally you push them to the server and then realize that, because IE users probably don't have Firebug open, and that's going to break. Log is a way to kind of make that safe. So instead of doing console.log, just do log. And if Firebug or whatever, if that was going to cause an error, it's not going to cause an error anymore. And so you're fine. You can do this. You can leave them in even when you publish it to production. And a nice little trick that's in here is that it actually keeps a history of what has already been published. And at this URL, there's a way to basically load up Firebug and have it republish all the log statements that have already come in before you loaded Firebug Lite. So that's pretty nice. After that is, I've gotten bitten by document.write calls a lot. Scripts that I didn't write that came into my page and just trashed my page, or I'm debugging and I have a document right and it just wipes out my page. So this little piece basically says, if your document right and you don't have something inside of it that this regular expression matches, then we're not gonna let you go through, and we're gonna log out what you were trying to do, but we're not gonna let it happen. And in this way, we can essentially just have like a whitelist of the document right calls that you're going to want to let through. If you're dealing with ads, you could probably augment this whitelist to basically say what ads you want to go through, but this might get a little hairy and you might have to get rid of it, but I don't know. I really like it. Okay, let's go into the styles. It's good stuff. First, I'm going to start off with the handheld. So this is for some mobile devices use handheld, not a lot. These just kind of make things look a little bit better on small phones. And the major style file. So style.css has a lot of things going on inside of it. And so it comes out with a reset, some font normalization, some base styles, and some styles that handle mobile devices, stuff like that. It starts off with a reset that is based off of Eric Meyer's Reset Reloaded, but has been kind of augmented and brought into 2010 for HTML5. So Rich Clark of HTML5 Doctor kind of owns this. And so one of the more notable things is that the HTML5 semantic elements like article aside, header, all those get display block because many browsers don't actually recognize these as display block, and unknown tags by default get display inline. So that reset goes down to about here, and you can learn more about that reset at the URL. We also have some font normalization. I really liked these. Getting font sizes to look the same across browsers. If you're not using pixels, it's not very easy at all. You're switching between ems or percentage, and it's just never the same. Using this bit of code and referring to font sizes that are at this URL will make sure that everything looks even across all browsers. It's really nice. We've kind of had a few adjustments here. We have a new way of establishing monospace fonts that is done based on some work from a lot of Wikipedia hackers. And then after we have our fonts kind of all set, we start off with kind of laying the groundwork and building back up from that reset. We start off with a color of 444 for all of our body text. Our headers do not get sized, so H1s and H2s are the same size as body text because, believe me, you would change them, so it just doesn't make sense to have it in the boilerplate. WebKit font smoothing. So this is a trick to tell WebKit kind of how you want the text to have some anti-aliasing. There's been hacks before to kind of have text thinning in WebKit on Mac, and so this actually explicitly does that instead of using kind of hacks around it. This is the property that controls that. And then overflow Y just forces a vertical scroll bar. The reason why is because I've gotten this a lot where clients are like, every time I switch between two tabs, the entire web page changes 18 pixels to the side. And I'm like, that's because of the scroll bar. It's not there on the first one, and it is on the second one. So this allows both Firefox and I think Safari and Chrome to always have a vertical scroll bar so that there's never that shift when either the page grows or when you're switching between tabs. There's always that vertical scroll bar, whether it's disabled or enabled. We want to make sure that boilerplate is as accessible as possible and really put a lot of thought into that. So So one of the things is focus style. So someone's using their tab key or the keyboard to kind of navigate the page. We want to make sure that it's able to target element to element. And some basic styles for, well, lists and tables and super and subtext. Great for this little piece of code. I love it for code examples. It does the way, it does wrapping the way that I want it, the best way possible. Things like form elements and kind of aligning the text next to them has always been a pain in the past, and so this basically makes that alignment the same across all browsers. We're going to set up a little hand cursor on clickable form inputs so that people have that kind of visual affordance that these things are actionable. And so selection is just a way to kind of say that when I select text, I want it to look like this. By default, it's hot pink. I encourage you to keep that because hot pink is pretty hot. But here are the styles. The WebKit tap highlight is on iOS right now. If you select text and it's like select all something. So this color probably should match your selection color up here. It's about the same thing. But the button element has a way of not playing nice in IE, but this fixes that. And then in IE7, you can kind of make images look a little bit better. If you ever scale them to a size that's not their native size, this bicubic resizing uses a better algorithm for basically the resizing, and it makes it look a lot better than it should. After that, we have a few non-semantic helper classes. So, you know, if you're doing image replacement, you just add the class of IR. It's going to do the things that you normally want to do. It's going to throw the inside text way to the side, overflow hidden, and so that the background actually comes through. There's no text. It looks good. Hidden just completely gets rid of it. It's not visible to screen readers. It's not visible to you. It's out of there. Sometimes you want to visually hide things, but you'd want someone to actually still find that content with a screen reader. The visually hidden class is perfect for that. It's been very widely tested on screen readers and is very reliable for that. Invisible hides it visually from both sight and screen readers, but it takes up space, of course. And clearfix. This is kind of the old school clearfix with a few modern adjustments made to it. It's definitely my favorite clearfix, and if you prefer to use a different clearfix, feel free to change it. Right here is where I encourage everyone to put their own styles. And then after that, we have some print styles. These are just some really good defaults. And they're also inlined in this page, right? So I'm using basically a media, kind of a media query to just put this right inside the rest of my styles. Instead of doing like another link tag up at the top here. The reason why is because excuse me, there's not really a reason to do another link tag. All browsers actually download the print style sheet by default anyway. You'd think that they would only download it when you want to print, but they download it right away when it's loading the page. So there's no real advantage to making it a separate file. So having it in here actually reduces that one HTTP connection and makes the page load a lot faster. And then down here we have orientation media queries. So on the iPad, for instance, these take effect. If you change the orientation of the device, you might want your page styles to change. And then down here we have kind of your grade A mobile browsers, Opera Mobile, iOS, and Android. Excuse me. And so these, most of the styles that you put in here would target mostly those A grade mobile browsers. And commented out here is this text size adjust. If you go to this URL, you'll see a lot better idea of what this actually does. But suffice it to say that the browser kind of optimizes the size of the text on in mobile browsers based on what it thinks is going to look good. And in many cases, it's really smart about that. And so you probably want to leave it to the browser unless you're doing a lot of testing yourself and you think you know better how it should look than it does. So the htaccess file is used by Apache if you're serving with Apache. And so inside of it, we have a few really good defaults. The first one that we start off with is actually the XUA compatible that we've seen before. So if you're using XUA compatible, you don't actually need to have this bit in your HTML because it's just served from the server, and both Chrome Frame and IE will kind of acknowledge this setting and do what's appropriate. The next is set access origin control. And so this is used for cross-domain AJAX requests, or also some cross-domain font stuff. Well, that's actually next, I guess. There are some concerns from security that you want to consider before you enable this, so feel free to read up a little bit more on it before you go ahead and turn that green light on. So fonts in Firefox 3.5 and up, and probably IE9, can't be served cross-domain without this little flag being set. So this is a nice little freebie. So if you're serving, you want to serve a web font across domains, this is going to help you out for Firefox and IE9. The next, we just have a few things to make sure that files are being served with the right MIME type. Some of these are completely necessary, like the cache manifest needs to be served as text cache manifest. Same here with the SVG and SVGZ extensions. Then we have this pretty badass little snippet, and so it's disabled by default, and it's a good way to want to keep that way. And actually, we just changed this, and so it's actually just straight up includes. But what this allows you to do is basically, if you create a file that says like scripts.combined.js, and inside of it you have some lines that look like this, where it just says like include file blah blah blah, include that one, it'll just inline that file straight up. So Apache does server-side includes, and so this basically says on anything that's .combined.js or .css, it'll just going to inline the whole thing for you. So it's kind of an easy way to get concatenation. Something that we're working on in the future is real concatenation for boilerplates. So we don't need to rely on this, but it's just a nice little trick in there for you. This allows gzip compression for everything that should be gzipped. This is really key. You drop down the file size of everything by about half, making Steve Souders really proud. So that's good. And then we have some expired settings. So this makes sure that if we send down a file and we know that it's not going to change anytime soon, we want our user's browser to hold on to that file and continue to use it so that it doesn't have to go back and forth. The page is going to load really fast on subsequent page loads. So here is where we control all that. So our default is a month, and but there's some things that we want to have just expire right away. Things like data fades, we want to always be fresh. But then when it comes to RSS feeds and then fav icons, and then we have our images, our web fonts, our JavaScript, a little bit more aggressive caching there. A lot of other good best practices, things that you've seen from like YSlow or Google PageSpeed extensions. These are in here. Things like, so this is disabling e-tags. Done. This is a snippet. If you're ever using an iframe and you want that iframe to be able to set cookies, you might be surprised when IE's like, oh, I don't set cookies in an iframe. And so this little guy does that for you. This is if your site is at example.com, when people type in www.example.com, you might want it to just go to straight up example.com. I think this is always a good idea. W's just get in the way, they make things longer. Why do we need them? We don't. So this little guy takes care of that for you. Options in multi-view handles this really weird bug that you can read about here. Options indexes says don't do indexes. So just kind of the example of what that means is if I go to this file, again, index, right? I see what's inside of this folder. Indexes minus indexes would turn that off. So that's up to you. So here's a reference to our 404 page. For all 404s, we're going to serve that page. One thing that I want to point out, this is kind of fun. I had some fun with this 404 page because it's not too important, I think. I use a custom attribute called frown. This page definitely does not validate. Well, only because of this reason, I think. Yeah. Not a real attribute. But then up in the styles, I use span frown. I use a transform, an unprefixed transform that doesn't work in any browsers as of yet, but at some point in the future it will. Anyways, because I guess the frown can be sideways or right ways. Okay, this is not important at all. All right, and then to finish off, UTF-8 is the right encoding. Always, I think I could say that. So we make sure that everything's always set with UTF-8. So that's a default car set, and we're just going to make that a little bit more explicit for a few files. So that handles our server-side config. So this is for Apache that I just walked through. But already we've had people contribute both Nginx and IIS configurations that do most of these same things. And so if you're running with one of those, you can grab those. And I guess that handles it for basically all of the code. I hope you have a better understanding of what's going on inside boilerplate. You can always read through most of the source on the site itself, although I recommend just going to GitHub. At github/paulirish/html5-boilerplate is where all the active development goes on. It's been under very active development recently and will continue to be that way for a little while. There's a lot more things that we want to get into it. Some of the things that we're working on is a build script. And so we basically want to automate things like JavaScript and CSS concatenation and minification, even things like HTML minification. We want optimized images, our JPEGs and our PNGs to be compressed, but in a lossless way. So a lot of these really good tricks that are kind of the foundations of serving fast websites. We want HTML5 boilerplate to help you out with this and make it really, really easy for you to do. So that's going to be coming. Look forward to that. And please come to the GitHub repository and get engaged if you'd like to help out with that. There's a few other ways to stay engaged. You can follow what's going on Twitter. And boiler_plate. We'll be posting all updates there, of course. And I also want to point out at the bottom of the boilerplate page is this Make It Even Better section. These are just kind of some good ideas things that don't really belong inside the boilerplate templates themselves, but are good ideas when you're doing front-end development to kind of consider. One of them that I'll point out is a coding standards document that I worked on with my previous company, Isobar. Has a lot of really good stuff in here. So if you're looking to share with your team and kind of codify some of the ideas that you have about coding standards, this is a good place to start and consider. I guess I'll thank everyone here. I really appreciate their work and how they're pushing the web platform forward. And well, I guess that's it. Please comment if you have any further questions, and I hope I can answer them. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching.